The St. Lucia Labour Party claims victory in general elections. High-level talks between China and the United States on Monday highlighted their differences and the continued lack for a will on the part of the U.S. to advance relations. Tunisia's president froze parliament and dismissed the government in a move denounced by opponents as a coup. Hello, welcome to TeleSUR English. I am Denise Herrera and this is from the South. The main opposition, St. Lucia Labour Party, has claimed victory in the general elections on Monday as St. Lucia's voters stuffed their frustration into the ballot boxes and rejected the Ellen Chapman administration after only a 5 years term in office. In addition, voters created history in the Caribbean by electing 2 independent candidates to the 17 members parliament, among them being some former Prime Minister Stephen King, who quit the ruling United Workers' Party to contest the country's North constituency, which he has been representing for nearly 3 decades and independent.
Where we shall put the interests of St. Lucians and St. Lucia first. When you go to the polls on 26 July 2021, vote the St. Lucia Labour Party. We are ready. The SLP is ready. We have faith that the people of St. Lucia.
Cuba's regulatory authority has approved the second phase of the pediatric clinical trial using the Abdala vaccine against COVID-19. The trial will be carried out in the province of Camagüey and will involve children and young people aged between 12 and 18 who will receive 3 doses of the vaccine with a 14-day interval between each. Abdala is the first Cuban made vaccine against COVID-19 to authorize for emergency use. It is also the first vaccine against the novel coronavirus to be developed in Latin America and has shown efficacy of 92.28%, ranking among the most effective jabs in the world. Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez thought his Twitter account denounced terrorist attacks at the Cuban embassy located in France, specifically in Paris. In the tweet he expressed, "We denounced a terrorist attack with Molotov cocktails against our embassy in Paris. I hold the U.S. government responsible for its continuous campaign against our country that encourages behaviors and for calls for violence with impunity from its territory. Until the moment, it is not known if there are injured or material damage." In a commemorative act, the people of Venezuela expressed their solidarity with Cuba and spoke against the interventionist acts of the United States against Iceland's sovereignty. In a rally in front of the Cuban embassy in Caracas this Monday, Venezuela citizens reiterated their commitment to the revolutionary struggle and the support of the Cuban people in the face of the U.S. blockade and aggressive policies, the most recent example of which was support for acts and destabilization in several cities of the country.
We honor those who fell in this attack. We honor those who fell throughout these decades in the entire American continent, in the Caribbean, precisely as they were struggling against our constant enemy, imperialism, and in this case, the imperialism of the United States.
Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador announced on Monday that his country will send 2 ships of humanitarian aid to Cuba, while again announcing the United States blockade policy against the island.
I take this opportunity to say that we made a decision out of solidarity in the face of this situation of blockade, which wants to politically subjugate the Cuban people, the Cuban government. We made the decision to help, to provide our solidarity in the face of this blockade, because it is not enough to vote every year at the UN against the blockade. And I take this opportunity to call on all countries of the world that what they expressed at the UN by voting against the blockade should now be converted into an act of solidarity with the Cuban people.
The Mexican president also defended the right of the Cuban people to live free of foreign interference.
Es un llamado respetuoso.
It is a respectful call It is not an act of interference of any kind, but it is necessary to separate the political from the humanitarian. Life is the most important thing. It is the most important of human rights, the right to life. Many things could be done. I suggest only one, with all due respect to both nations, that families in Cuba be allowed to receive remittances from those who live and work in the United States.
Diverse sectors and organizations of Argentina mobilized towards the Embassy of Cuba in Buenos Aires in solidarity with the Caribbean island. Before the political media operation promoted and financed by the United States government against the Cuban people, a movement that integrates guilds, social organizations, and civil society, demonstrated in front of the Embassy of Cuba to condemn the economic blockade imposed by the White House. And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back. High-level talks between China and the United States on Monday highlight their differences and to continue lack of will on the part of the U.S. to advance relations. Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Xi Feng said during talks with U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman that the China-U.S. relationship is now in a stalemate and faces serious difficulties. He noted that this is fundamentally because some Americans portray China as an image enemy. The Chinese official stressed that mutual trust and mutual benefit should be the preconditions for a bilateral cooperation and that both powers should seek common grounds.
In fact, China has been playing responsible and constructive roles on these issues. What should be emphasized is that cooperation must be based on mutual trust, on the premise of mutual benefit, and on the necessary condition of a good atmosphere of bilateral relations. The U.S. should adopt a correct view of cooperation. It simply won't work when the U.S. seeks cooperation with China while harming China's interests at the same time.
China Eastern coast was put on the highest alert as Typhoon Yanfei made a second landfall on Monday morning, bringing downpours to surrounding regions. According to the Chinese Met Department, provinces in the eastern part of the country will see heavy winds and torrential rains over the next couple of days. The Shanghai municipal government issued an emergency warning on Sunday afternoon, requiring employers to make appropriate arrangements to guarantee their employees' safety. Local authorities have been vigilant after torrential rainfall in Henan province led to devastating floods that left 69 people dead. As daily monsoon rains ease, rescue works began in western India this Monday. Rescuers wanted through waist-deep mud to reach injured residents and start a massive cleanup operation after heavy rains triggered landslide and flood that killed over 150 people. The western part of the country was hit by heavy rainstorms, with 250,000 people evacuated from their homes in 3 states and power cut across vast areas. And we continue in India, where 9 people were killed by a landslide that destroyed a bridge in mountainous northern state of Himachal Pradesh. India's Met Department warned of further downpours over the next few days. Flooding and landslides are common during the monsoon season, which also often sees poorly constructed buildings collapse after days of non-stop rain. Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi met with United States President Joe Biden at the White House this Monday, where they discussed a so-called new phase of the U.S. military mission in the country. Biden confirmed that the United States will end its combat mission in Iraq by the end of the year, but said U.S. troops will continue to train and assist Iraqi forces and they battle the Islamic State. The U.S. has about 2,500 troops in Iraq after a series of drawdowns in recent years. Their presence continues to be condemned by the Iraqi population, and the parliament has called for all foreign troops in leave the nation. In the United States, firefighters are battling the blazing fire of Oregon, California, which in the space of 2 weeks has burned the equivalent of a city of Los Angeles in vegetation and forest. Over 500 firefighters are battling the blaze that has grown so big it is generating its own weather system, with authorities warning conditions could worsen. The flames have grown so large that they have created clouds that can cause lightning and high winds, which in the turn can serve to fuel the fire. Fires have already ravaged 3 times more vegetation this year than they had at the time of 2020, the worst fire year in California history. Despite its size, the fire has so far ravaged extremely remote areas, destroying the few dozen homes and a small building in its path. Raging forest fire in central Sardinia, Italy, have forced the evacuation of 900 people as flames threatened some residential areas and others were engulfed by light smoke. According to the deputy chief of the firefighters emergency department, no deaths or injuries have been reported and the situation seems to be under control. The wildfires, which broke out over the weekend, have been spread by dry southerly winds. 4 fighting planes from France and Greece joined the Italian air fleet to help control the blazes, which have consumed around 20,000 hectares in the province of Oristano.
It is an unprecedented reality in Sardinia's history. Huge firestorms favored by weather and climate conditions absolutely at the limit. Up to now, 20,000 hectares of forest that represent centuries of environmental history of our island have gone up in ashes. Currently, the situation for the people in the zone of Oristano, Sardinia, affected by the wildfires, seems to be under control. This feeling obviously depends directly on the weather trends that, for the moment, let us foresee a confirmation of these hypotheses. In any case, the operational centers in the area remain ready, and up to now, about 60 firefighters are still working, in addition to the assistance of the civil protection to try to monitor and bring the situation back to normal.
Canada's Tail Mary Simon is the first Indigenous Governor General as the nation faces a knock with the colonial past of the weight of the discovery of mass graves of Indigenous children. Simon, a former broadcast journalist, diplomat, and advocate for Indigenous rights, previously served as president of Canada's National Inuit Organization. She was also leader of the UNI's Circumpolar Conference, which represents the organization in all Arctic countries, as well as Canada's first Yukon ambassador in Denmark. Her appointment in the largely ceremonial role in which she served as the official representative of Queen Elizabeth II, a lasting reminder of British colonialism in Canada, comes as the government of Justin Trudeau claims it is working to address the abuses against the Indigenous population and the public outcry over the recent discovery of the more than 1,000 unmarked graves at former residential schools where Indigenous children were first forced to assimilate to the white European culture. The head of the World Health Organization has welcomed news that Germany's biotech company will start trialing a malaria vaccine next year using breakthrough technology. The project is backed up by the WHO, the African Center on Disease Control and Prevention, and the European Union.
But the very high efficacy of 2 mRNA vaccines for COVID-19 have shown the world just how powerful this technology could be against many diseases, including malaria. The pandemic has also demonstrated the urgent need to invest in scaling up local production capacity, especially in Africa. We still have a very long road to travel, but this is an ambitious and purposeful stride down that road. WHO remains committed to working with you, our partners, until we reach our destination, a world free of malaria.
And we have more story coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. Tunisian President Kais Saied froze parliament and dismissed the government on Sunday in a move denounced as a coup. The move marks a dramatic escalation of the political crisis in the country, anger over the government's handling of a massive recent spike in COVID cases has added to general unrest over the nation's economic and social turmoil.
First decision, freezing the functions of the parliament. The constitution does not allow its dissolution, but allows the freezing of its activities. Second decision, the lifting of the parliamentary immunity of all deputies. Third decision, the President of the Republic will take charge of the executive power with the help of the government, which will be headed by a new leader appointed by the President of the Republic.
Sunday saw widespread protests in Tunisia as citizens took to the streets to protest both in favor and against the government. Most demonstrations were centered around parliament blocked off by the military in the country's capital. A United Nations spokesperson said the organization is following the situation in Tunisia very closely after President Kais Saied's suspension of parliament and dismissal of Prime Minister Hissam Mechichi.
We are following the situation in Tunisia very closely since the announcement by President Saied yesterday. We call on all stakeholders to exercise restraint, refrain from violence, and ensure that the situation remains calm. All disputes and disagreements should be resolved through dialogue. We're hoping that the situation will remain calm, and we're trying to see to it that all the various parties on the ground do what they can to ensure that the situation does remain calm. Obviously, as you just noted yourself, the region is a very volatile one, and it's certainly a region that cannot bear to have more unrest than it has presently had.
The Israeli regime launched a series of airstrikes on several cities in the by-side Gaza Strip late Sunday night. As part of the ongoing attempts to starve the Palestinian people, Israel has also reduced the fishing zone of the Gaza by half. Israeli fighter jets target a plot of farmland northwest of Gaza City and a plot of land east of Khan Younis, causing material damage to the cities as well as the nearby civilian property. No casualties were reported. The strikes came after the Zionist regime reduced the fishing zone of Gaza from 12 nautical miles to 6 nautical miles. A move the claim was in response to the launching of incendiary balloons from Gaza into Israel by the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas. 14 years following the supposed Israeli disengagement from Gaza, Israel has not actually disengaged from Gaza. It is maintained control in this land border, access to the sea and airspace. 5 million displaced Syrians have returned to their homes thanks to the improved security situation in the country, still suffering from foreign interference and terrorist groups. The figure was revealed during a joint Syria-Russian meeting on Damascus on Monday, aimed at monitoring the result of the international conference and the return of the Syrian refugees held in November 2020. During the meeting, it was reiterated that the Syrian government will continue to take all measures to facilitate the return of the displaced and ensure the conditions for them to live the dignified life. Lebanese businessman and former Prime Minister on 2 occasions, Najib Mikati, secured enough votes in parliamentary consultations on Monday to designate the head of the new government. The political move comes aimed to the country's economic crisis, deemed by the World Bank and one of the worst signs in the 19th century. 65 years old, Mikati first came to the Prime Minister in 2025 as caretaker from 3 months following the death of former PM Rafi Hariri and other officials in an explosion. Mikati stepped into office again in 2011 under circumstances similar to the present scenario, when the previous government resigned and the lack for consensus among different parties pushed the country into a spiral of instability.
In constitutional steps, it is necessary that I have the trust of the lawmakers, but in reality, I want your trust. I want the people's trust. I want the trust of every man and woman, of every youth. I don't have a magic wand, and, alone, I can't make miracles happen. We are in a very difficult situation, and you all know that. We must all stand together. I know it's a difficult step, but I tell you I am assured. I've been studying this situation for a while. If I didn't have the necessary external guarantees, and I didn't know that it was time for someone to be in the forefront of this issue to limit the spread of the fire, I wouldn't have taken on the job to be named Premier Designate.
The man accused of the failed magnicide of interim president of Mali, Assimi Goïta, has died in custody according to a statement from the country's authorities. The suspect died in a hospital while in the custody of the security services. The government said in a statement on Sunday the suspect's identity was not disclosed and an autopsy is pending to determine cause of death. The detained was accused of attempting to stab interim President Goïta a week ago and 8 Al-Adha players at the mosque in the capital Bamako. We have come to the end of this new brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at TeleSUR.English.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram for TeleSUR English. I am Denise Herrera. Thank you for watching.